welcome to episode number 15 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast, When the Lights Go Out for Good, recorded on February 28th, 2019. My name's Eric. I'm the host of the show. I'm based in Southern Ontario. I'm a hunter, target shooter, ham radio operator, VE3 EPN, and computer geek. I got into preparedness when I was working frontline emergency services and witnessed an over-reliance on emergency services during major events such as ice storms, power outages, etc. Started a small preparedness company to help people get prepared and look out for themselves for at least 72 hours, if not longer.
Hi, my name is Ian. Greetings from an alternate secure location. I live on a small hobby farm. I'm an outdoor enthusiast, sport shooter, reloader, and my farm's designated handyman. My professional background has taught me to adapt to unexpected situations and also reinforces my belief that learning never ends. I was going to say Alan was late for researching this topic, but he actually showed up just in time.
And I'm Alan. My friends and family call me a safety nerd, and also they call me Justin, as in just in time. My medical background as a first responder helped me develop a mind for safety. These days, I teach first aid, coach my family and friends to be better prepared. I'm a locksmith by trade. I've worked in the physical security industry for more than 20 years now.
And you totally ruined my EMP joke. I was going to say you're short-circuiting your phone, computer, and car, and can't join us tonight, but that's okay. Here you are.
Well, we had some protection in place.
That's right.
You hardened it against the EMP. That's good.
Yes, I'm what happens when everything goes right.
Yeah, to get his equipment out of his Faraday cage.
Yes, exactly.
So we've got some shocking content for you in this episode. We're going to start off with some news articles relating to preparedness in the outdoors. Next, we're going to be letting you know how we've improved our preparedness since last episode. Then we're going to get into the main topic for this episode being EMP. What it is, how it may affect you, and what you can do to prepare for it.
Well, I'll cover off. We're hoping to get another person to join us tonight. Gavin should be here soon, but he's going to want to mention the SNC Lavalin thing going on with Trudeau, which basically doesn't come into preparedness too much other than the fact that governmental unrest is always a problem. So I'm sure that'll be covered in another podcast another time, but certainly big news there.
The biggest lie ever told. I'm the government. I'm here to help you.
That's right. So as far as news articles for myself, actually it's kind of a three for today. Actually, as the week went on here and I started doing show notes here, I started off with the big news that India started bombing Pakistan for the first time since 1971, and with two nuclear powers standing toe to toe over this basically DMZ. Nobody had really crossed the line for quite a few times, and so or quite a few years, and all of a sudden now in the last week we've had basically 3 incidents going on. Have you guys heard much about that so far?
Planes went down, then there was a retaliation, and then Pakistan shot down some planes after India bombed Pakistan, and it's a bit of a mess going on there.
Yeah, so basically the second round was a couple more planes went over the border, and of course they got shot down when they have one pilot captured now, and which of course escalates things even worse. Now you've got prisoners. So Air Canada, immediately suspended flights to and from, which comes into play when travelers are waiting for that black swan event when they're sitting there traveling, and now all of a sudden they can't get home. That's a big deal, right?
Big problem.
And now of course it's escalating even more. They've got a bunch of tanks and troops running towards the border from both sides, so we'll have to see how this plays out the next couple of weeks for sure.
Now they're like, the government has plans for when things like this happen, right? Like they have a response protocol, as I recall. There's a thing that happens.
Well, yes and no, but the problem is like right now you got your average insurance policy coverage doesn't come into play in active war zones, so a lot of people are reticent to go there. Right. And basically, with the exception of military planes, you're not going to have much luck convincing private companies to go there if you can help it.
Right, and then the military doesn't want to get involved because then it looks like they're choosing sides. So people are kind of stuck in limbo trying to figure out how to get to a friendly country.
And when you think about it, the average college student that was going there on a backpacking trip 2 weeks ago even, everything was fine and dandy, and all of a sudden now it's like, hey, I need to get home, and I don't know how. So that's just
find one of the other stands and hop a train, hop a plane.
Yeah, exactly. I'd be heading east and seeing if I can get out of Asia somehow, so...
Yeah, wow, that's not a good place to be right now if you're trying to get home.
Nope, not at all.
And Eric, you want to cover something off as well?
Yeah, so I've got a news article here from Global News in regards to a 70-car pileup. That's 70. That's a lot of cars on 400 south of Barrie. So that's for people not in the area. The 400 is a major highway, runs north and south, and that's a lot of cars that pile up on that stretch of highway. There's quite the big snowstorms the last week and a bit in the area. A lot of whiteouts, a lot of poor driving conditions, and usually about once a year, a big schmuck up like this does happen on that highway in that rough general area. And just all the more reason to make sure you've got some kind of a kit with you, because you're going to want some kind of preparedness equipment with you if you do get stuck up in that kind of situation, because the highway was closed for quite a considerable amount of time.
Well, I think
a couple of years ago, the whole highway got shut down. It took helicopters from search and rescue helicopters from Trenton, which is about 5.5 hours driving away, and 12 hours to get there and finally get everybody off the highway. But it was a long time to be out in the cold by yourself.
Oh, yes, it is.
Not just a car kit, but even having alternate routes planned out. If you're sitting in Toronto and you know that 400 is closed, you're going to want to make sure you have some alternate routes planned out, so you're not sitting there picking and choosing side roads for the first time, right?
That as well.
If you want to know more about that, back to our last episode on basic orienteering.
That's right. I mean, when I used to live in Southern Ontario, we used to refer to the 400 as the 6-lane drive through the country. But I mean, it is the main thoroughfare, right? So if that shuts down, it's like you've got a lot of people looking for alternate routes, and you don't want to be like, basically just squished onto the number 5 side road or whatever right beside it, and having to fight traffic on that one too. So.
It's 3 lanes going in each direction. They're all busy a lot of time. So detouring those, 10,000 cars off to a 2-lane road is just asking for more trouble even.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep, absolutely, for sure. And it's said it's good to have the equipment, good to have an alternate plan, and actually practice the alternate plan, not just kind of have it in your back pocket and hope it works.
Yep.
Drive it once or twice. Let's move into what we've done lately for our preps. So for myself, I've been busy working away, and been away from home quite a bit. But I did have some time to clear the snow away from the generator. As I talked about in that last news article, there's been some pretty big windstorms in the area, lots of snow as well. So I took some time to dig it out and make sure that it's got some good clearance, so that in the event that the power was to go out, it's actually going to start and run reliably and not just bog itself out and stop running. I also paid attention to the news that was reporting the fact that we're going to get some pretty big windstorms coming through the area. So went out, fired up the chainsaw, which did thankfully still start up. It's been a while since I started her, and cut back some branches that were getting a little bit too close for my liking to the house. So I was able to cut those back, and then the winds did pick up, and 70-car pileups happened.
Yeah. That wind was insane. Like usually my coffee maker wakes me up in the morning, but the wind was blowing so hard I didn't even hear it that morning. It was nuts.
Well, it doesn't take much before you're approaching gentle hurricane force winds for sure, and 100 kilometers an hour is up there.
Gentle hurricane. I'm gonna use that term to describe my son going forward.
Well, it's friendly hurricane.
It's like a Cat 1. It's like no big deal, right?
Hey.
Anyway, so for myself, I'm back to work as well, so prepping takes a little bit of a backseat for now. But I had just a few days at home, so during the limited time, we made sure we had to keep ourselves busy. But we had some more baby chicks hatch, which is good for the meat birds and everything else. We have the ongoing process in the house right now. We're changing out some bulbs from compact fluorescent to LED just to save not just power bills on a regular basis for cost savings, but for peace of mind too, because I guess when you hook up the alternate generator, you want to keep the load as low as you can to keep the generator more fuel efficient and not overload the generator. So all the bulbs that will stay on when the generator is hooked up are all being changed over to LED. So it's kind of a big deal. And we found a good deal. So right now you get $3 a bulb at Costco for the 60-watt equivalents for LEDs, which is pretty good.
Oh, that's pretty decent.
But the problem is with LEDs, of course, they are susceptible to EMPs, so we have to talk about that too.
That's a good point. This week's been an absolute madhouse around here. We ended up taking in a family member's dog, approximately 6.5 pounds of fury, but he's in a good spot, and he seems to be a little bit happier now. In the process of joining one of the local first response organizations. So this is really the last time you'll see me with the beard. I have to shave it off next week. It's a bit of a bittersweet moment, but that's been my week. So it's been aside from the big windstorm, everything else is kind of taking the back seat.
Well, having a biological for a alarm system is always great too, because they're on 24/7.
Yep, absolutely.
But then also, I know what you're saying. It's probably the oxygen mask thing, is I guess what you're getting at.
That's exactly what.
Yeah. So don't worry. Sooner or later, they'll come to their senses. They'll allow you to have one. Trust me on this. I know.
All right, so maybe we'll move into the main topic of the show. What is EMP?
So an EMP is an electromagnetic pulse. It happens because of either a man-made device or a natural disaster that fries all the electronics in the affected area. Causes of EMPs or electromagnetic pulses include nuclear discharges, solar flares, or if we go back to the Ocean's 11 worth mentioning, that they use a pinch and shut down all of Vegas all at once.
So well, of course, that was first the phenomenon was first kind of like officially discovered. They'd suspected it, but they weren't for sure. They didn't know anything about it until Operation Starfish, which I won't even start with the jokes right now. But anyways, Starfish Prime back in 1962, it had some unexpected results. They did some basically orbital nuclear detonations after the Soviets decided to go and put an end to the halting of testing. So they resumed testing of their nuclear weapons. So the United States decided to up the ante, and they threw it out in space and blew it up. And sure enough, they did it within line of sight of Hawaii. And of course, it blew some lights out, played with some radios and telephone systems, and they tried to figure out what happened. So they ended up repeating the experiment a few times, and the Soviets caught on to what they were doing, and they started doing it in space as well. And that was kind of the discovery of how EMP could be weaponized. So as far as EMP itself, like Alan mentioned, it can be man-made or natural, nuclear and non-nuclear. It doesn't have to be a nuclear explosion to cause it. But basically what it boils down to is it's an intense surge of electrical energy traveling at light speed, and it's basically affecting anything within the line of sight. So the higher up you are, the further the EMP effect can happen. And so that's why sending it into space is the most effective use as of it. So basically, whatever the source is, it basically gathers up gamma radiation as a discharge. It collects up like a wave of electrons. If you think of just pushing them all out, it like ripples in a pond, and it can cause over voltage situation in electronics. So basically, I attached in the show notes a Wikipedia article for those that want to read it. And basically, it's a really fast moving at the speed of light surge of electronic energy.
Yeah, so some examples of some real world pinch would be like pulse power devices in modern day would be like radar, particle accelerators, and lasers. A natural example, solar flares.
So, of course, we could get into all sorts of science talking about this as well. The EMP of any source is basically broken into 3 sections, depending on how fast the energy is moving and how long the duration is. And they refer to them as E1, E2, and E3. But honestly, we would bore, I think, everybody to death if we went into the minute details of all that. But let's just basically break it down to the fact that it's going to happen no matter which one of the 3 you're talking about. All of them happen faster. The surge protector can open up and prevent damage to any electronics you might have. So if you think you're safe just because you have like a surge protector on your computer, you're very wrong.
So an EMP, how might it affect you?
Well, anything that's run by a computer theoretically stops working. That means literally everything stops working. There's nothing in our world anymore. Nothing in our infrastructure that isn't computer monitored, computer tested, computer generated, or computer controlled. That includes our power generation systems. That includes of course, our telephones, our cars. Just about everything. Our podcast. Absolutely. I mean, what would we do if we didn't do this every week?
Yeah.
I guess sitting there sharpening anything that wasn't electrically driven, I guess. But
my sharpener is electric. I don't know what to do anymore.
Exactly. We could do the podcast with tin cans and string.
Smoke signals. We were talking about this last week. Smoke signals. Yes. Morse code. This is why we need Morse code and semaphore.
Yeah, there you go.
So interestingly enough, that as far as non-nuclear devices go, already like publicly they're discussing what they call HEMP or CHAMP, so a high altitude electromagnetic pulse, or a concentrated high altitude magnetic pulse. They can be airborne, they can be shot into space, or whatever. And they're already talking about these in news articles. So if they're talking about news articles, they've probably got some even more advanced weapons that are not for public consumption yet. I did throw in a little news article basically talking about Raytheon's latest cruise missile based EMP weapon, which is interesting. The fact that they basically can fly a cruise missile out into a target and basically zero in on certain buildings, not even just like an area, just like if you want to like zap one building and it's all of its servers inside, you can do it now. And the problem is it's so cost effective because there's zero defense against it, because we'll talk about this later about hardening it. If you harden a building against EMP, all you have to do is up the amperage and get a higher voltage rating, and all that hardening is useless. And so the more they harden a target, the more higher the voltage will get. And before you know it, it's basically just like an electronic arms race as we go here.
Well, that's disconcerting.
Yeah. So as far as what else is going to be vulnerable, I mean, we actually talked about this on a BlackBerry messaging group this morning too. I mean, any of the cars made post 1980, nobody truly knows what's absolutely going to be affected. But I mean, a solid fact is that anything with a carburetor, without a carburetor, meaning like anything that's fuel injected, is going to be having a problem, or electronic ignition control or anything else. So unless you have a carburetor, distributor, and points, that's about the only way you're going to get away without being affected. So again, I mentioned no fuel injection, starter solenoids, even like if you have a starter solenoid to start your car, which everybody does unless they have a crank start, that's a problem. So I mean, I was looking actually at my quad when I bought my quad back in the day. I thought, oh, it's great, it's carbureted, it's not fuel injected, and everything's fantastic. But even the gear shift is run by a microchip.
Right.
Oh, well.
So no
It's not shifting.
Yeah, so it has a pull start, and the problem is, but even to shift gears, it requires electronic like circuit control to go from drive to reverse. So even then, which I thought I was pretty good, it's no good for that. But so modern generators, digital radios, most airplanes, like I said, my quad. Back in the day in 2004, I think they tested some cars with an actual like governmental backup. They did some testing on various types of cars. The results were sketchy. They didn't exactly give any parameters for it, but they said, well, don't worry, only 10% of the cars should be affected by an EMP if it actually goes off. But the problem is, even with 10% of the cars affected, imagine if 1 in 10 people didn't have a car nowadays, how it would affect the economy and the infrastructure, right?
Absolutely. So I guess my question is how are we dealing with the effect, or how are we measuring the effect? Because depending on which source you read, it's either going to affect absolutely everything, or as you said earlier, it's line of sight. So if it's in the shade, it's theoretically unaffected, right? Because light doesn't bend, so as long as it's not exposed to the direct line.
I think just like any other radiation source, though, too, they can penetrate up to a certain point. Like I'm sure if your car was buried in a rock cave, it'd be one thing. It'd be another thing if it was like in the open, of course, right? So they talked about cars in parkades not being affected, but cars in open parking lots being affected. They've talked about all sorts of other things, but everything is just, it's all theorizing, right? You get a bunch of guys with PhDs to sit there and talking about it, and what they say opinions are like, right? Like everybody's got one. So
just like everyone's got one of the else thing. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, but the problem is that even if you think about that, the down and dirty of this, I mean, all transportation needs service to run them, like you mentioned before, like trains, airplanes, even the SkyTrain here in Vancouver. It's like gas pumps, even cash registers. I mean, GPS satellites, if they let one off in space, any satellites that are running GPS signals, if they're in line of sight, they'll be affected, but the ones on the far side of the globe won't be. But of course, your own receiver on the ground would be gone if you're in line of sight. But even if some satellites survive, you'll have a lower accuracy with GPS and more outages more often. Water pumps, nuke plants, it never ends, right?
It certainly paints a bleak picture, but
Sure does.
But again, like how is this really affected? Because it again, we seem to be getting contradicting information. If you're in a parking garage, if your car's in a parking garage, then it should be okay. So if I park my car in the garage, it's probably not going to be affected, but my laptop sitting on my kitchen counter will be affected. I'm not sure I'm seeing the correlation.
Well, it's interesting enough because they all run it off of what they call antenna links, or like a virtual antenna. So for example, like, computers with the power sources, if these power like cords are hooked up to a computer, that acts as a giant antenna, right? So if your computer's in a line of sight, even if it's just a thin building wall, that computer cord can be acting as an antenna and magnify the effect. Whereas like a compact fluorescent light bulb has a circuit board in it, but the circuit board is only like, not even an inch by an inch, and so the actual virtual antenna size of that thing is small. So would it be as affected? And again, it's theoretical, right?
It's all theoretical.
But you look at stuff like power lines, which run across for miles. Of course, they're giant antennas or concentrators, right? So I mean, They're going to concentrate all that energy that gets sent down from space or from the local weapon that's used. I mean, they're all going to be focusing that electrical energy down the line into what these large transformers, and that's where we run into bigger problems, right?
So it seems to me the larger danger is more about the power generation than it is about the actual circuit boards being affected. In terms of everyday electronics, vehicles being a different matter, but it's more an issue of the power going out than than my computer not working anymore. I just won't be able to charge the battery.
Yeah, because like one thing that shields people from EMP effects is grounding, right? So if a thing is grounded, it's going to ground out. It's got a problem. But a car, for example, is sitting on 4 rubber tires. The theory being is that, well, not really, but synthetic rubber tires, and so that basically that assuming that it's still got some metal in the body, not just plastic. Their theory was that with rubber tires, a metal body should actually be isolated enough that it wouldn't be affected. However, as we know, they're plastic bodies now, and they're not really rubber tires, and so on. So that's where they think the effects change, right? And we talked about the grids there being an issue too, is like all these lines coming into these large transformers that need like 18-month lead times to be replaced. They're all like unique voltages and sizes and resistance requirements for each site. You got foreign powers that are making these large transformers for us that may or may not want to sell them to us afterwards. There's so many kinks in the armor when it comes to EMP and its effects on pretty much everything, right?
Yeah, there's certainly, it would certainly take some rebuilding. And so I guess are we talking about Armageddon, or are we talking about a long-term inconvenience?
Well, I think the government doesn't want to say the word Armageddon or Mad Max or anything else, but the problem is it's logistics, right? So I mean, you talk about the local transformer on your street. Actually, I think I threw some links in there with the transformers blowing out in Toronto there. You get a local transformer on the street that blows out. They've got thousands of spares sitting around in North America, right? But these large transformers at the substations, they don't have spares, maybe 1 or 2 for thousands of actual active units. It's very hard to keep spares for that stuff. So the larger the unit that goes down, the less spares they have, right?
Yep. And then we have the power outage in 2003. Where
that was really that was only like I think there's like 5 substations that went down there, and it took a long time to get it going. And the government doesn't want
for 5 days. Yep.
Yeah, they don't want to create mass panic, but they don't want to say that it costs money to have these spares sitting around and costs money to have crews lying in standby. So how do you sell this to the public that it's not a big deal, right? They had some guys, actually, I didn't even put this in the show notes, but they had some guys about 2 years ago down in California. They were like taking rifles to a substation just to see if they could burn one out. And because all these transformers are oil cooled, and so they poked enough holes in the transformers, they leaked out the oil, and sure enough, part of California was out of power for a couple of weeks, right?
Jeez.
It doesn't
just to see what would happen.
Just to see what, and they never caught the guys either. That's the worst part. These guys were sitting there plinking with rifles for like 2 hours at a substation, and nobody caught them. And I was like, hey, interesting.
Yeah, and that was somebody just running a test, not even somebody doing anything malicious.
No, exactly. That was just like a couple of either yokels or maybe some guys, doing a dry run, so to speak, or whatever have you. I mean, it's very interesting. There's so much theoretical. We go squirreling off into about 1,000 different moments on this stuff.
I think we're gonna go. We have to go back to our tinfoil hat episode before we get too far down this.
Yeah, I mean, one thing is. Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to mention here, just in the show notes before I forget too, is that you were talking about things what can be affected. I mean, flashlights, something as simple as flashlights. Nowadays, we're all buying LEDs, and of course, they all have circuit boards in them. Like an LED is literally a light-emitting diode, and a diode can't happen without a circuit board. So, I mean, theoretically, if the antenna is really small but the charge is really high, it can be affected. But, the old school mag lights with incandescent bulbs, or the crappy dollar store ones that just have the old incandescent bulbs, they're not affected at all. So,
but even mag lights are all LED. You can buy incandescent bulbs for those anymore.
You can't buy the old Krypton bulbs for them anymore?
Not that I've found recently, anyways.
Oh, I should hang on to the ones I have then.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's getting fewer and further between.
Yeah, interestingly. So I was reading a little bit more on the EMP Commission on this. I put the link down at the very bottom of the show notes. Is that strategically they figure the best time to do this would be in spring. I think it was mentioned in 1 Minute After, that William Forstchen book. But basically, if somebody lit off an EMP, basically right in springtime in North America, just after everybody eating up all the previous year's crops, and before they got the crops on the ground here, the worldwide food supply has only got about 2 month lead time on it. So if you have the breadbasket of the U.S. and Canada not being able to produce food for a year, you're talking basically like a starvation issue worldwide, because we do export a lot of our wheat, right? As does the States. So,
well, and I suppose that again that comes back to do we have the manpower? I mean, depending on who you ask, we either have an incredible shortage of manpower in North America, or we have an absolute abundance, and can we organize that manpower quickly enough to overcome what the machines were doing?
Well, the problem is you look at a place, like a place like Saskatchewan. I mean, it's a pretty small window between, like, say, if they let off an EMP to get the crops in the ground and get people mobilized, moved into place, and working fast enough to get things planted and harvested.
Yep.
By the time they got any repairs done, I think they'd missed the growing season, and that's all it take is like miss one growing season and you're done, right?
Absolutely.
So. Yep. So I don't know. I don't mean to drop it on you there, Eric, but did you want to talk about the next one there?
Yeah, so we've got just listed here the Carrington Event of 1859. So that was big, powerful geomagnetic, if I could talk tonight, storm during a solar cycle. Well,
basically what happened with that one too is it was before we really started recording and knowing the science behind it, but basically we had a solar flare let off back then, and even with our primitive equipment back then, it was lighting off telegraph wires. It was causing all sorts of issues, even with stuff that was either vacuum powered or just like straight circuitry. And so we didn't have a bunch of cars running around with microchips back then.
Nope.
It still caused a lot of damage, which is interesting. Because that's still today the largest geomagnetic storm they've ever recorded, which I guess lucky for us, right? But if one does let off, I mean, because it travels at the speed of light, we have how much time before it hits the Earth, Eric?
Like 8 minutes.
Yeah, so if we get a massive solar flare happens, by the time it happened, they noticed it, they talked to the superiors, and they released it to the public. You'd probably just be in the newscast when it hit. That's about it.
Not a lot of time. We had another news article in here too that we'll leave in the show notes, just about a congressional report stated that 90% of the population would be gone in a year. Smartphones, pacemakers, insulin storage, it's all not working anymore. Power plant failures.
I came into this episode thinking, this really isn't such a big deal. Why on earth are we talking about this still? And the more I read about it, you guys are making me scared. I'm honestly, I'm going to go wrap my house in tinfoil. Keep it light.
We had that already last week, but I dropped the ball on that one. Sorry about that. Yeah, so I mean, even little things like you mentioned there, Eric, the power plant players, but industrial pollution, like, so, a nuke plant goes offline, and not even so much going offline power-wise. I think I mentioned this to another Eric we were talking to, and the problem is that it's not so much the power failure at a nuclear plant, which requires external power to run, of course, but it's when the computer system says everything is normal, all of a sudden the computer's offline because the chips are blown, and the last thing that nuke plant that was the actual machinery was aware of, everything was fine, so it just kept on doing normal operations. There's nothing that regulates the cooling at that point, nothing tells it to shut down, and it just keeps going until it melts down, basically. And there's no way to scram a nuclear plant. So right then and there, you've got intensive industrial pollution happening, and anybody downwind won't even be aware that there's a problem because there's no radios working. And so that leads to bigger problems, of course, down the road too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Being downwind downstream of a nuclear power plant certainly does not necessarily make me feel all that good about this. Thanks, God. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And little things like those KI pills you get for living downrange of a nuke plant. I mean, no medicine delivery, right? I mean, for a lot of elderly people, that's huge, right? I mean, if you're on heart pills, you're on all we talked about before, antipsychotics, whatever have you. No more medicine delivery either, right? So that's going to affect a lot of population.
Well,
that's absolutely true.
So let's move into what we can do in such an event. Certain things I want to look into. Building a community, for example.
Building a community is fantastic. Nowhere to go what to do. You can protect your electronics by parking your car in the garage, and you can protect electronics out and about by using a Faraday cage or a box or a bag. So a Faraday cage isolates what's inside, which prevents your tool death. So it prevents the transmission of the electrons through the package, and it keeps it from going. How long is the hazard? How long will it work? These are all, again, theoreticals. If you watch on Netflix, the Doomsday Preppers, which was just so much fun to watch. There was an episode where one of the preppers was really concerned about an EMP, used a steel garbage can with a foam block in it, so nothing was touching the sides, and then touched a battery to it for a good moment or two, and then there was a big spark and a big bang, and everything looked kind of cool, but everything worked inside afterwards. So,
well, of course, this battery's only at 12 volts. These EMPs are 250,000 volts, but I mean, theoretical volts anyways, because it's all based on amperage and time and everything else. But a Faraday cage, well, I mean, for sure, if somebody wants to research that, it's something you can definitely Google and get a big lowdown on that. The big thing with Faraday cages, of course, is make sure you seal the crack between the lid of the garbage can with metal tape or an ammo box or whatever you're using for a Faraday cage, and don't let anything that you want to protect inside of it touch the edges. So whether you use foam or cardboard or whatever to keep it off, it just make sure it doesn't touch the side. So as I put in here, fun fact, guns are EMP proof, as they are. as is ammo, stored food, livestock, and gardens. They're all EMP proof. So I mean, yes, that's all the more reason to have your own little backyard garden. I mean, because it's not affected by some crazy guy letting off an EMP overhead. So we talked about old tech backup, like the obsolete old mag lights with the old krypton bulbs. I mean, they're just incandescents with a straight battery circuit. Doesn't require any sort of circuit board. We talked about EMP hardening, which sounds dirty, but it's not. And basically what it boils down to is making sure that nothing gets grounded out. So it keeps whatever you're trying to protect isolated. It's kind of like body armor for nuclear weapons, but basically the problem is with EMP hardening is if you've say hardened a Hummer to be immune to EMP up to a certain voltage rating, all the person has to do is do a higher yield device, whether it be nuclear or non-nuclear, and the hardening is useless. It's basically becomes, like I said, an arms race back and forth between pulse and protection. So another good thing that's not affected by EMP is books. I mean, I think we all have huge collections of EPUBs and PDFs, but if you have some critical ones that you can't remember everything that's in them, maybe it's worth considering printing them off.
All your medical books, your books on livestock and growing things. Those are probably my first targets. Having printed copies of those, absolutely.
And data backup. I mean, if you're a positive thinker, like for sure the three of us are, if there's a chance in your mind that computers would come back into use post EMP apocalypse, maybe consider using a DVD storage device like optical CD or writable DVD, I guess, versus extra hard drives and jump drives, because DVDs are not affected by EMP at all because they're not magnetically based. They're not susceptible in any way, shape, or form. But of course, writable DVDs only last about 5 years before they start to degrade as well. So maybe just consider rotating those every 5 years. But it's not a bad idea anyways for data backup.
My laptop doesn't even have a DVD drive anymore.
But if you have a USB outlet, you can buy external ones for $30, right?
External one, yeah. Sure can. It goes to the comment that literally everything we do is designed to be run by a computer and not a computer helping an analog world.
Oh, absolutely. I made the comment before about my quad, but of course, many older dirt bikes are not affected by EMP whatsoever. Like, for example, the old Honda XR125s, they're like carbureted. They've got points, distributors, they've got everything else. And there's absolutely, and they're even kickstart, so there's nothing required. Good old kickstart dirt bikes. So, I mean, if you're thinking about a EMP-proof kind of cheap to get bug out kind of vehicle, or just even like a handy little farm toy, just consider it a straight old dirt bike. It can be 4-stroke as well. It doesn't have to be a 2-stroke. And so it can be relatively quiet as well. Grounding and isolation for certain parts can help. If you're concerned about EMP in any way, shape, or form, maybe consider securing some spare critical parts. I think since you mentioned a movie, I had to mention a movie too. So War of the Worlds with Tom Cruise. So he had to get his vehicle working again, so he took it down to the shop, sure enough, and the guy was able to change out the ignition. I think it was the starter solenoid and something else he said. It popped right back to life. So whether or not it would actually work or not, but who knows, maybe it might just be a starter solenoid is all you need to get going, but maybe just start to think about what you may need. Everything from spare radios. Like if you're concerned you want to have a couple radios that will work after the fact, maybe consider storing them in an ammo box that's isolated from the rest of the world, for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Just make sure you leave the batteries out of the car.
Yeah. Yep. So I did doing the little digging for the show here. I actually was kind of wondering what the U.S. military had got set up for that, and of course, with their continuity government plans, they've got these airborne night watch airplanes that are basically glorified 747s. They're called E4s, and Air Force One, of course, they're so totally EMP hardened. I mean, their EMP rating is like through the roof. Of course, you and I can't really afford one of these, but there is Alan's.
A few more listeners to the show.
Yeah, so there is Alan's suggestion, though. I mean, for sure, like the Faraday cage is a solid plan. I mean, and again, YouTube is your friend with that one. Just don't forget to seal the crack between the lid and the body. yeah, you can use everything from garbage cans, ammo cans, but like I said, don't use a microwave. I mean, you'll see some people on YouTube talking about what a great Faraday cage a microwave is. Well, it's the wrong frequency because microwaves are different than gamma radiation, and most of them are trying to prevent radiation from going out. They don't give 2 squirts about what's going in. So microwaves are not a realistic thing, despite what somebody will show you with a cell phone and a microwave. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's certainly more of a challenge now. Let's talk about like lightning rods. So when we prepare for electrical storms, we know that lightning strikes the highest point, so we put a lightning rod up nice and high, and then we ground it directly out. Would that be an effective tool? Would that be an effective antenna to gather those electrons and reduce the impact of an EMP on the rest of my property?
No, because basically what it boils down to is lightning rods are basically like it's an anode cathode thing. So basically you've got the cloud building up an electrical surge, and it just so happens that a negative lead happens to be closest to that cloud, and the cloud goes directly from the cloud to the lightning rod. However, you got like basically like I said, ripples in a pond coming down from the sky. There's no actually concentrated source, so a lightning rod wouldn't do a whole lot other than to protect the immediate like surface area of that lightning rod straight down, and that's about all it would do.
So I need an umbrella. We need some kind of umbrella to protect rather than a lightning rod.
So you maybe skip the tinfoil hat, go for a tinfoil umbrella.
I think so. You know, I'm thinking a whole Mr. Burns thing where we take this and put a big thing over and block out the sun and.
So of course, in my evil mind here, I thought of something like what's been happening in the Middle East a lot of times. These guys that do the suicide bombing thing is they'll have one guy let off a suicide bomb, and basically a second guy waits around until all the ambulances show up, and all the people, the bystanders that want to come and watch and see what's going on show up, and then the second guy goes in with a suicide bomb, lets off a second one to increase the damage and the terror factor. So you think about it from an EMP perspective, if these people are stupid enough and evil enough to actually let off an EMP, I guess common sense would dictate that they would basically let one off, maybe wait a few weeks for everybody to like break out their Faraday caged protected items, vehicles, whatever, like bring them out of the bunkers, get them into work because they need to save the day, and then let off a second EMP to take care of that second round of stuff that's available.
Not an uncommon conception either, or concept. It's pretty typical when somebody's house has been broken. They wait 3 to 6 months, let insurance replace everything that was lost, and then go and hit it all again because they know it's there.
And it's new.
Yep. So it's not unheard of. I did think of a news article. Just to jump all the way back to the beginning now that we're coming back to the end, and probably pretty topical as well. So Trump was to meet Kim Jong, which one is in charge right now? They met in Vietnam yesterday, and they were going to sign a de-escalation agreement, and they left without signing the de-escalation agreement and without having a scheduled lunch, and sounds like everybody kind of left in a huff. So that's another thing that has happened recently.
I think Trump said that sometimes you just got to walk away.
He's not wrong, and that doesn't necessarily bode well for it.
Yeah,
that's when people start to throw tantrums.
Well, and from a cost perspective, I mean, like it says sending millions of nuclear weapon, or like a stockpile of nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles and everything else, to spend money on one nuclear weapon and not to like get the tinfoil hat theory going again. But North Korea does have 2 satellites orbiting on a north-south rotation over the Earth, interestingly enough, and they claim that they're weather satellites. Most weather satellites are either geostationary or orbit east to west. And interestingly enough, they actually come up from I have to correct myself. They actually come south to north over the U.S., and which negates all of the U.S.'s ballistic missile protection. And basically, they figure it's the right size and orbit and everything else to be a perfect EMP weapon over the continental U.S. because it travels right over the middle of the U.S., right near Omaha. So if they're going to light it off, all they have to do is basically flick the magic switch, and they have an EMP weapon already to go in orbit right now.
This is why Trump wants a space force, and maybe that's not the worst idea in the world.
Yeah. And it's interesting because nobody knew why they did that orbit. They thought the Koreans were just being morons for putting a weather satellite on a south-north orbit. I think they were like evil geniuses myself. I mean, who knows, right? It's cost effective. It is. So
yep. It's definitely one way to do it. But yeah, man, it's you get too many people, too many egos, and all of them a really big problem.
All right. podcast challenge time?
I think it is. So for this week, I guess I'll read it off. We're try to figure out what critical systems you have that will be affected by EMP. Name 3 items you have that are EMP proof, and 3 things you need to harden or have a backup of. For example, radios, and then do it. Then you can email us at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca. Let us know what you identified, what you've done, maybe some other alternate plans that you have in place as well for an EMP, and then we can discuss it in future episodes.
Well, there's a lot to cover off too. I mean, we just scratched the surface here for sure, and I mean, there's certainly some more reading people can do, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. Google's your friend on this topic.
Yeah,
as long as it still works.
This is true. Yeah. All right, and then for some more reading, there's a link in the show notes for the EMP Commission report, a fiction book for 1 Second After by William, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce that last name, but I'll put it in the show notes.
Forston.
Okay, there you go. Perfect. And Lights Out by Half Fast. After Armageddon is available on YouTube. There'll be a link in the show notes as well, so a little bit more you can follow up on if this is something of interest for you, or something that you've been thinking about, or something that you've been researching for some time. A few more things you can look into. Well,
and we didn't get any questions on the live chat that I saw there, but for sure, if anybody has any questions about this, we can certainly answer them in subsequent episodes for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And we'll move into some shout outs. So I just want to take a quick opportunity, episode number 15. Just a quick shout out to all the listeners out there that are actually providing some feedback and participating in the show, and anybody who even isn't. At least you're listening, and we appreciate it, because without you guys listening, there'd be no show. So much appreciated, and a quick shout out to all the listeners.
Absolutely. We had a lone YouTube feedback last episode there, and it just came in just as we were closing it off. I didn't have time to actually talk about it, but Transport Canada Guru, he gave us another good topic idea, but his idea came in just as we were sitting there fumbling over what we were actually going to do for the next show. And but financial preparedness is a really good episode idea, so that's definitely to come, but I think we have something that came up beforehand as well. We'll talk about that in a couple minutes.
Absolutely. But yeah, financial preparedness for sure is one we need to touch on. So we'll go into some email and iTunes reviews. So we received one email from Raphael since the last episode. He says, "Hello, gentlemen. Thanks for the podcast. Super relevant content. I have one piece of feedback, 2 suggestions for episodes, and an answer for orienteering in the Southern Hemisphere." So the feedback is in regards to some of the audio. He's saying there's some sound distortion, possibly a bad Skype connection. He thinks that the sound quality and clarity would be the number one priority in improving the podcast even more.
Well, I guess with that, I mean, it's the problem is with different internet connections, and of course we're zapping back and forth across the country. That doesn't help either.
That's true.
So
I also have internet that comes from the sky, so it can be dodgy some days.
Well, it also depends on the atmospheric conditions too, right? I mean, ionosphere and onwards can affect it. So
we're doing our best with the paychecks we're earning doing the podcast.
That's right, and you get what you pay for, right?
You got it. Yep. Yeah. So if anybody would like to donate into upgrading anybody's internet connection on the show, we would greatly accept it. And then he's got a couple of suggestions. So number 1, I've heard the ham radio episode and couldn't avoid thinking about a part 2 episode in which one of you at least is communicating 100% over ham during the entire episode, simulating somebody communicating from an area affected by a grid down situation. It would be amazing to put preparedness plans to work live on the show.
Well, I guess the problem with that, as the YouTube coordinator here, the problem is that there's also a delay between what's on YouTube and what's on the live show, and then of course getting the actual sound from the ham radio to a microphone source on the YouTube would be a problem. You're basically talking about 2 different platforms with 2 different ways of transmitting information and trying to merge them, and that's way beyond my capabilities. I mean, even if we did like an all ham radio over one of these computer repeaters, that would still be difficult to record, because most of the times if it's just one-on-one, we can do Skype, but if it's more than 2 people, we have to use YouTube, and that's when the problems start. So
Let's do an entire episode where one of us does semaphore, because that's totally visual, and it would solve the audio problem.
I could just do flags, and
so it'd be kind of cool to do, but as far as our abilities to set something up like that right now, and the way technology works, we're a little bit restricted, and I don't think we're gonna be able to pull that off. But
I think that's a good goal for someday. We should try that at some point.
Maybe
or if we had a listener that would volunteer to set up the logistical setup behind it, they're more than welcome to set it up, and we would make them the main host of the show.
100%.
There you go. Yeah, I've been kicked out. Gotcha.
Yeah, that's it. Just for one episode, we could let them they could take the lead for one episode, and they could just set it all up for us. That'd be fantastic.
Perfect, excellent. Yeah. So email feedback@prepperpodcast.ca, and you can be the host of the show. So he's got another point here. I feel that most preppers believe in the lone wolf fantasy, that their prep skills, guns, and gear will be enough to get them through on the long run. That may be fine for a short-term hiccup, but a longer crisis, just a few weeks long under stressful circumstances. If you're alone or supporting a small family, then your situation will deteriorate fast. I don't disagree with that.
Absolutely.
No, actually, before I didn't even want to interrupt you halfway through there, but it's totally true. I mean, a lot of guys, firmly believe that they're going to be like shooting like Sylvester Stallone and Rambo with one-handed on an M60, giving it all their best, and some chick dressed like a porn star is going to show up perfectly coiffed and clean in the apocalypse, and going to want to like just find you super attractive right away and everything else, despite the fact that I'm like old and fat. And sorry, yeah, absolutely, it's not going to happen that way. It is I think a fantasy of beginning preppers, but the harsh reality is way different. Even like a 24-hour power outage will fix that fantasy, I think, right away more than anything else. I think that's probably the number one problem with most people is finding like a mutual assistance group in their local area. It's probably the biggest hurdle all of us are facing, is finding like-minded people you can get along with, and I guess for a continuous basis is a huge challenge.
Absolutely, and that's what he goes on to talk about here in his email. Is to me, the only solution is a local mutual assistance group or a MAG. MAGs are much more important than stocking months of food and water and having gear and guns if a serious long-term scenario is considered. The problem is, at least in Canada, MAGs are not even talked about, and he's not wrong there either.
Nope.
Well, not talked about and not organized. Like, I mean, I think even down in the States, they have actual websites dedicated to. It's almost like Tinder for preppers, but without the dirty business. But I'm just saying, like,
without,
But I mean, yeah, it's that is definitely number one problem. Is is just finding people that are actually willing to help each other out and not want to be the top dog, and maybe not be willing to give up control in order to actually help each other out.
Well, I think the biggest thing the biggest place where that mutual assistance group would be successful is if everybody agreed to a committee situation where first person to arrive at point X during event Y starts this task, and then the next person becomes in charge of this committee, the next person becomes in charge of that committee, and then eventually everybody arrives and everybody breaks out into their own specialties. But understanding the priorities and what everybody needs to do, and that everybody gets to be in charge of their own little thing, and you run it like a phalanx, right? You protect the person next to you, and when everybody protects the person next to them, we all survive and we all thrive.
Yeah, it's just that initial startup of finding one is I guess the biggest problem. But he's absolutely right.
That's why I'm here. I'm just planning to come visit you guys when things go really far south.
Come on over. No, it's true. Like, I mean, lone wolf fantasy isn't really a fantasy by choice. I think the lone wolf is a sad reality in a lot of times, because I mean, although to the credit of some of my neighbors too, during power outages and everything else, we always make sure everybody else is okay. But that's like more of a neighborhood mag. I don't think they're preppers per se, as they're just good neighbors. But that's always a good start of a mag in case, I guess, as a backup plan.
Absolutely. And I remember I was reading, I want to say it was Popular Mechanics a few years ago, and there were a couple of guys talking about what happened when they stayed, I want to say in Texas during a hurricane, and there were like 4 or 5 people in this neighborhood that stayed. Everybody else evacuated, and they by default kind of banded together, and they shared dinners together so that they could conserve power, and they just kind of went around door to door solving problems, picking up furniture and raking up all the leaves and stuff. And while it didn't happen by extension of necessity. So maybe I'm naive, but I like to think that the common decency in people will tend to bring us together rather than tear us apart. I think but that's just the Canadian in me and not the American.
Fair enough. So he does mention here he'd like to see an episode that covers off mags, and he lists off some possible questions that we could include in the episode, and greatly appreciate that because that helps cut down on some research time. So there's some good questions in here, and maybe we'll put together an episode on mags for sure.
Do you want to touch some on them now, or just talk about a different episode?
You know what? We'll keep it a secret.
All right,
we'll put them out there during the mag episode when we do record one, and we'd certainly welcome Raphael as well on the show if he wants to come and even be a participant in the show on the panel during that episode. By all means, welcome, or anybody else if they want to come on and be a panelist on any of the episodes. Now we'll get to the orienteering using the Southern Cross. This is information here that he's put in his email at the very end. So it says you'll not see the Polaris if you are south of the equator. But you will easily see the Southern Cross. This is one of the most recognizable constellations and is shown on the flag of many southern countries such as Australia, New Zealand, Brazil. Just find the Southern Cross, find its longer arm. Now imagine a line prolonging that same arm in a straight line, going down towards the horizon by 4 times the actual length of the arm. When you've reached about 4 times that length, stop your imaginary line, look down at the horizon, and that's true south.
That's interesting. Yeah, like I had no idea how that worked at all. I just knew the Southern Cross was a thing. I had no idea how it actually worked. I mean, I can count the days I've since spent south of the equator, and it's not many. So
I can, and it's not many.
Yeah.
So he signs off the email just saying, "Thank you for the podcast." Raphael from Alberta. He gives his ham radio call sign, but I won't read that one out just because it could possibly identify him depending on the information that he's put in on his call sign for records there. So we'll leave that out for now. He is a ham operator.
Thanks for the info, Raphael, and I really appreciate that. It's certainly great to hear about it, and I think that's a great idea that we should do. We should get him on for the mag episode. I think that'd be a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. As far as iTunes reviews go, still sitting at M14 Medic for the last written review from January 22nd, 2019. And we are up to 14 ratings. We've got 13 5 stars, which is great. And we've still got that one little guy at 4 stars. And you know what? We'll take it.
I'll take it.
Hey, actually, if M14 Medic is listening and he has a Navy version of an M14 front sight, let me know. just saying, I'm going to throw it out there because they're very hard to find.
Throw it out there. Yeah, all right.
Awesome. All right. So I guess, with that, I'll bring episode number 15 of the Canadian Prepper podcast to an end. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Please help us out. Take a few minutes and submit a review. It helps other people find us. You can also find us at prepperpodcast.ca.
Okay, sorry, Alan, I kicked you out on this stuff. I just
okay.
I didn't change it fast enough.
I wasn't going to be here, so I'm kind of a late addition. I'm mostly just here for the color commentary.
Right on. Okay. All right, so you can reach
all the same stuff from the last episode still applies.
There you go. So you can reach Ian directly by emailing me at theislandretreat@gmail.com. Re-record these shows on YouTube live chats. If you want an early peek at the shows, just please subscribe to the YouTube channel, The Island Retreat, and click on the notifications tab. This gives you alerts when we are going live. And I guess I should add Gavin's part, that since Gavin did was a no-show too. You can also find myself, Ian, giving me my 2 cents worth on Canadian Patriot Podcast, also available on iTunes and YouTube. There you'll find Gavin and myself, if he was here, discussing the merits of a freer society, exposing more government waste, and scrolling off on the tactically driven conversations.
Well, please check out rapidsurvival.com. You can get me there on the live chat while buying some prepper gear. I have Faraday bags. Or you can also email me at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca while you're still buying some Faraday bags. Thanks for joining us. Tune in for the next episode where we'll have a special guest. We have Chris Gilmore, who will be discussing the advantage of understanding ecology and wilderness survival in prepping. Until next time, be prepared, stay safe,
and keep learning.